So I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. It's Wednesday, April 27th at 1 p.m. and we're having a special council meeting. Thank you very much. So 2.1 adoption of the agenda. To adopt the agenda for April 27th, 2022 for the special council meeting. Do you have any additions or changes or deletions and anything missing off the agenda? Seeing nothing, could I have a motion to accept the Councillor Caprera? I'm a little slow getting my words out today. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We have no delegations, adoption of the previous minutes. There's none, delegation business, none. So moving all the way down to new business. We have 7.1. We have an RFD from December 31st, 2021, draft operating financial statements discussion. And I see we have Ms. Quinlan here to start us off.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Before I proceed, I'll just maybe give you an update. This meeting was originally intended to present draft audited financial statements. Unfortunately, last week on Wednesday, we were advised by the county that the joint transaction for the Regional Waste Management Authority was not complete. So they advised us and the Village of Caroline that they were requesting a 2-month extension through municipal affairs. We actually had draft statements. I had reviewed them with the auditors and I'd given them the go ahead to, prepare the final statements, but we've had to postpone our statements for the same amount of time because we're all waiting for those entries. Apparently they had a contractor hired to do the closing entries for the regional authority. Like we finished the regional authority, but then there was subsequent events and items. So those are in the process of being completed. So rather than bring you draft audited financial statements, I have brought you a draft income statement for December 31st, and I'll walk you through that. And then once we have our final statements, we will bring them back at a later date for presentation.
Does that give us any penalties? Does that give us any penalties for not filing on time, or are we still able to file our necessary documents, or how does that work?
So the impact is we can't file on time, which is the deadline's like May 1st. So we won't be able to file. There's no penalty for filing. And we were in contact with them because, at first we were thinking about just doing a note to the financial statements, but municipal affairs did indicate they would prefer that we postpone so that the submissions, because they collate everything and it goes up on their website so people can download all municipalities. So they would prefer that we postpone it. The only impact was when we get our report card, we'll have a red no instead of a green yes for one of those indicators.
But if there's no penalty, then
no,
it makes no total sense to, yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much for doing the research to find out.
Yeah.
Because you would have had to deal with that.
So I'm going to just walk through the statements. What you've got is there's a financial statement, a draft financial statement, and then a variance analysis. I always like to give the end product first, then people don't have to wait. So basically, we are sitting with a surplus of almost $376,000 for the year. That's in my mind very tight, but given that we lived through COVID for the majority of last year, it's actually, I think, really a job well done for all the departments. When I looked at just recreation, because they're really the ones that were impacted the most, and I guess the impact is about 300,000 on them. So I think it's really good that we've come out with a surplus. I saw another municipality there was some emails going around and they had a deficit of 1.3 million. So COVID has hit a lot of communities. And the other thing is there's pockets of unusual activity from COVID. Like, I mean, I know you shut down facilities, but we see things like increased water usage, the ATCO gas franchises down, and like there's little pockets of things that because of the restrictions changed the way people do business, and you see it show up in your expenditure. So it is kind of interesting, but it was pretty all-inclusive. So I'll just walk through the statements with you and give you some explanations, and then if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. So in our revenues, we're actually sitting at 100% of budgeted revenue, which is great. We were out by $10,000. There is pluses and minuses throughout each of the categories. Taxation came in on target. The only discrepancy was our grants in lieu, because we had budgeted them for 100% and then they were only paid at 50. General sales came in a little bit above budget, and the main area, two areas, was the airport fuel tax revenues were up, so they were higher than what we had budgeted, and our cemetery sales were higher quite a bit. Recreation revenue, as we talked, it's down quite a bit compared to what we had budgeted. But, when we look at it, the arena was quite fortunate. They weren't impacted nearly as much as the pool and the fitness center. They were able to, because they were in the winter time and the restrictions, they were able to operate, whereas the pool was actually closed and so was the fitness center. Utility revenue is slightly under budget. Overall, it's the water and sewer was over. And again, I think we saw that in 2020, that because people were maybe working from home or homeschooling, they're using their facilities more often and businesses aren't. So that came up. The solid waste is under budget, but that was because we had originally budgeted for a joint operation. Fines and penalties are below budget. When I started investigating that, and we'll have to adjust the budget going forward. In 2019, we changed the tax penalty bylaw, and we used to charge penalties 3 or 4 times a year, and we actually dropped it by about 10%, which is significant. So we'll have to catch up on that budget. So it's a little bit lower, and the RCMP and bylaw fines, they continue to be lower than what we bill out. And really there's 2 reasons. One is because people don't pay them until either they have to go in and do a renewal, or sometimes the tickets may go and get canceled. So, but we have no control over that. Permits and licenses are over budget. And again, I think this is something that we're seeing because of COVID. People were, home renovations have gone up. Franchise fees were a little bit lower. I actually contacted ATCO Gas because they give us consumption estimates every year that you see, and we base our percentages off of that. And I've very rarely seen them lower, but they were down. So for some reason, people used less gas. But yeah, so I was trying to figure out, was it a milder winter? Was it, people just being more conservative? The interest revenue is a little bit over budget. That's partly because we did start to see some of the rates climb a little bit, not much, but we also are caught up on all of our capital grant revenue, as well as we got a large, I think we got 5 million from for the waste treatment plant. So we have much more money being earned in interest. The interest from those grants, it always goes back to the grant in question and then enables us to do more with the projects. And rentals are down because, again, closures due to COVID, but they were offset because we now have a new rental in we have new rentals in the post house, so the main floor is being rented out, as well as the 42nd Street facility. So that really helped us to generate some additional revenue. Expenditures, the legislative budget is below budget. Again, that's travel and training budgets were severely impacted during the year. People just weren't able to go anywhere. Administration is on budget. It looks, well, it's showing as over budget, but we had two grants, two ACP grants, one for the regionalization and one for the, sorry, I'm drawing a blank. We had two, but they were $200,000. So those expenses went in there, but up under the contributions, we received the extra funds, so they offset each other. Protective services are actually under budget, which is kind of surprising because the policing is over budget. Fire and community enforcement, we had vacancies in community enforcement and a reduction in the animal control contract. And as well, the OH&S department, there was one staff member that was removed from that department. So there was some savings. Operations, if you look at that one, it's showing as coming in high. We recorded an additional $300,000 that was paid to the county for the Highway 11 realignment behind the Husky. It's actually a capital project in nature, but because the county did the project, they own the asset. So we give the money to them and it's considered a grant. So it has to run through the operating. But other than that, basically the operations was doing well. They were under budget due to some lower expenditures in supplies, contracted repairs, salt, gravel, and sidewalk repairs. And some of the power costs for streetlights were higher. I think we did in the 2023 budget. We reviewed the electrical costs, so we've adjusted those. Utilities for the year were under budget. And again, there was some budgets that operations identified during the 2023 budgeting year that we've reduced, so that should catch up with that. And then there was some vacancies. Social services, so FCSS is always what I call self-balancing because they get their funding and they have to have a zero, so there's never any impact on us. Parks and Rec, look at theirs. Yeah, they're showing like a $650,000 variance. So they were under just because of the closure. So the pool was under by 278,000, arena 62, guest services 164, sports fields 28, and the splash park was actually over budget by about almost $7,000, and that was because of the water. We estimated what the cost of the water was, and it was higher than what we anticipated. And then not every year, but you will see we have a loss on disposal of tangible capital assets. We did pass motions during the year to recognize the revenue, which is why it's a bracket, 252,000. But then once we sell it, we have to remove the costs out of the TCA. So it ended up, it was a loss. Though those are things we can never really, we don't budget for them just because we don't always know that they're going to happen. So that does impact our statements, but I mean, really what it's going to change is probably your transfer. So overall, I mean, it shows 584, and then to get to the budgeted amount, we have to subtract the debt because the principal for debt doesn't go through an income statement. We subtract the transfer to reserves, so what we were moving to reserves, and of that almost 1.452 million of that is just general transfers, and the utility transfer, so all three utilities, water, sewer, and solid waste, the transfer is 1.2 million. So that's what we're putting into the reserves. So all in all, and when you get your statements, there might be a few minor changes depending on what we get as far as those closing entries. But this is basically the statement that's the draft audited statement. So I think it looks really good. I think the departments and council were really responsive last year as far as dealing with COVID and managing our way through something that was extremely unusual. Yeah, is there any questions?
Sorry, Counselor Ald has a question.
With the county and delaying their reporting, it doesn't have anything to do with the amounts of transfers that we're dealing with. It's just strictly a matter of, there's no disagreements at this point. It's just a matter of getting the reporting done.
No, there's no disagreements, but you have to do they have to do a whole bunch of closing entries. And some of it might have had to be, the only thing I can think is, if they had to finish their year end to get the numbers for the auditors to do the closing entries for the waste transfer. So it all kind of backs up on each other, but yeah, there's no disagreements or anything. It's just getting those entries.
Counselor Phillips.
Just more of a comment again. You had alluded that, COVID hit all municipalities, but some municipalities did not manage it well, obviously with some big deficits. And it's just good to see that, again, Betty and your team and Dean at the Town of Rocky Mountain House reacted in a very positive, favorable manner. And we weathered COVID and the year with a little bit of a surplus. So that's fantastic. Good work.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think the directors that are in charge of more operational, I mean, everybody did a really good job. We had a whole COVID committee that met and kind of tried to deal with the issues, and I think it made a difference. So hopefully we're at the end of that.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah.
Can you just refresh my memory for what is the restructuring study for administration? Because
we got funding and was a joint study between ourselves and the county and the village of Caroline, and they went out and they did surveys with the general public and with staff to look at what options there were, if we should continue as 3 standalone organizations, merge all 3, merge and they published a report last year.
I thought that was that the one that was that we went to had open houses with in the summer? I thought that was all covered by a grant.
It is.
Oh,
But the revenues in the top, like if you look.
okay. No, I just wanted to clarify. So it has nothing to do with, it's just how you post.
Well, yeah, like the revenue shows up. If you look at the revenues are, from the page now.
Yeah, I was just looking at your note and I'm like, I don't.
Yeah, our grants, our federal, and provincial and local grants, we actually received significantly more, about $977,000
Yeah.
more grant money than we had anticipated
Almost
last
$1 million.
year. Yeah, and part of that was that it was the 303,000. This minute, I have it written down. We got it. The money that wasn't, the grants that were not budgeted was the 100,000 remaining from the most grant for COVID, the 303 that's recording, that's offsetting that Highway 11 expenditure, and then the provincial operating grants for those 2 ACPs, 294,000. So that's about $700,000 extra.
I just wanted to clarify because I'm sure someone's going to ask me that and I'll be like, let me phone and then I'll just ask now because people are keen about budgeting right now. And I do want to say as well that I'm so like coming in, there was a lot of things that Mr. Kraus mentioned to me at the start of my term, and I was worried and banging away, how can we save and what does this mean? And And I want to say again, like how great of a job. It was so wonderful with all of the COVID and issues to come in on budget. It was like
Yeah.
fantastic job.
No, I find the organization was very responsive. I mean, right, I'd say from council down in terms of dealing with something like that. And it was good to see that people were, yeah, they were just responsive. And it shows. So, yeah, it was good.
Anybody have any more questions or comments about for Ms. Quinlan? Councilor Phillips, something?
No, if there's no further discussion, I'd just like to make a motion that council accept the draft December 31st, 2021 operating statement and variance report for information.
If there's no questions or comments on that motion, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing that there's nothing else remaining on the agenda, Mr. Kroos, did you have anything else that we needed to? So I think that if no one on council has any further questions or comments, then we can call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very